Hi, my name is Chris Higgins, and this will serve as the video portion of my ePortfolio, the final product that I'm going to be creating for my Master's in Education Technology degree, which I've been pursuing over the last 2.5 years. And that pursuit all started here. The first time that I was asked to log on to my EdTech Moodle account, which took me some time. I wasn't sure if I could use my username as Christopher Higgins or Chris Higgins. I set it up as Chris Higgins, and then I kind of panicked a little bit, thinking, "Oh, wait a second, are they gonna know it's me?" So then, after a couple of hours of trying to figure out if it was okay, then I moved on from there, and I have not looked back since. What I've learned in this class isn't something that's just going to be learned and forgotten. Although what I have learned is definitely going to develop and morph into something that maybe someday won't be recognizable just because of how quickly technology is constantly changing what I can do in the classroom and what I want to do in my classroom. So definitely this was the start of basically a lifetime of change. Um, my ed tech degree, one of the first classes that I took was my 502. And this was my first assignment, developing this homepage, which initially took a lot of work. It did not look like this when I first did it. We did not have the contrast in the backgrounds, the lettering, the text that I used definitely was not this appealing, nor was it this clean, did not contrast. Um, was not rounded up here at the edges. These were all boxes, and initially they were all shifted to the far left. But through time, as the semester continued, I was able to figure out how to clean up the page and make it a little bit more presentable. One of the things about the 502 assignments that I really enjoyed was that what we created is actually useful to my current students. One of the first things that we created was the netiquette page. And if you look at this page, it really just highlights some basic concepts that students need to know about. And I work at a junior high. My students are in the 8th grade. And for the first time, in their lives, my students are starting to go online. They're starting to have their own social media sites. And some of them have never been taught how to go online safely. So, despite the fact that one of the main things of this lesson for me was to figure out how to have this floating text box on the right hand side of the screen, if you look at what's inside that text box, it's good information for my current students. When you look at safety on the net, it just talks about never sharing contact information, post photos that are flattering of you, don't communicate with individuals in secret from your guardian, stay away from gossip and don't start rumors, visit only trusted sites, only open attachments from known contacts. All of those are great advice, and I see students on a daily basis that would benefit from this website. And so it's something that I can definitely currently and still use in my daily working environment. So if we look at some of the growth that I experienced in this class, if you look here, so here we had to do a scavenger hunt. It was a copyright scavenger hunt. This was my first attempt at having a contrasting different colors of backgrounds. Then I struggled with it. If you look at the way the text is, the text kind of blends in with the background. And if you read it too long, you just kind of start to lose the text. It doesn't stand out as much. But it was an attempt, and it wasn't too bad of an attempt. But when I compare it to what I did later on in the class, there's a noticeable difference. So here, look at my ability now to insert pictures from fireworks. That was the big thing here, and actually create hyperlinks to different resources. Having this image inserted and having the text go around it. There was a lot of things that I learned just in the duration of a couple of weeks in this class. If we move further down from the interactive concept map and you look at the jigsaw, again, the presentation online, I didn't have the contrasting backgrounds because when I did this assignment, I felt as though it wasn't needed, and so I got comfortable with working with coloring, the contrast, where all of a sudden less is more. I didn't have to make things bright to have them stand out, and it was just there's a learning process that occurred over this semester that I look back on, and it's almost that I've forgotten how much I'd grown in this class. And then the final product was this web quest. Looking at this web quest, I feel as though it really shows how much I had grown from start to finish. Being able to have my navigation bar on the left hand side as well as at the bottom of the screen, having the floating image here, the text going around it, the contrast that I used, the color schemes that I used. It wasn't something that earlier on in the class or initially in the class I would have ever been able to pull off. But as you look at it, being able to have the consistency of the pages set up the same way, that was something that I'd struggled with in um, earlier assignments, but I pulled it off in this assignment. And it really was one of those sense of accomplishment. The amount of time that it took me to develop this web quest uh, was about as equal as the amount of time as it took me to set up my first page for this course. So if you go back and you look at the homepage for 502, and this is the revised version of the 502. My initial 502, all the text was the same, probably was the same size if I remember correctly. It was all the left-hand side of the screen. And it took me numerous hours over numerous days to create this. And then when you compare that to the final product of this class, when I did the web quest, the ease at which I created the web quest and the frustration level was so much lower by the time I got to this part of the semester. And it was something that I still use today. I still work with HTML5 quite a bit when I'm designing things for my students, and I found it to be probably one of the most useful classes that I've taken. So if you look here, we have 506. This was just sort of a setting up an online website to revolve around one lesson, and what the lesson that I was working with was linear relationships. This class really highlighted working with imagery, and if you look here, this lesson focused on text and how to identify text of importance. So if you notice the P, how it's large and it is a different type of text than the rest of the words. And if you notice how the boxes all go up here, gradually getting bigger, sort of leads the viewer to this box because that appears to be the most important information. Whereas as they come down here, then they see click here to see why. And then here, this is background information that if a student's interested in enough, they can read it, but it's not necessary for them to understand at this point of the lesson. So then if you carry on through the lesson, notice that the theme and the imagery is very much the same. It all connects. You follow the line up, and here we have the primary information that I want the student to get. But if they're curious about more, they can read into the smaller box, and then it leads them back to the original page. On this one, so here the lesson wanted us to establish connections between different pieces of information presented on the same screen. So if we look at the rows going across, each one is its own color. All the columns are connected by the arrows, so it just guides the learner's view from left to right, going one row at a time. But then the learner also can realize that each column is connected in meaning. So I really liked this image when I created it. I feel as though it does a very good job of guiding the learner from row to row and then connecting all the column information. I like the contrast of the very dark black background. It causes the boxes to stand out. Also, how the boxes have space in between them to allow that black background to highlight each box. I think it also allows for each row to be separated nicely. So then we continue on further, and the students get a little bit of a clarification as to the three different ways that linear relationships are represented. And it was just a really, this whole class was just a lot of fun, creating all these different types of images, working with contrast and colors, and using colors and contrast for comparative purposes, guiding students through steps. That was the challenge. This one is how to set up steps for the students to follow, and then using text to highlight important keywords. I did struggle with that on this lesson. I don't feel as though white was the best choice, but it's what I used. And then something else I also really enjoyed learning during this lesson was my lesson plans. Just being able to come down here and having drop down windows where Word documents are easily accessible to students was something I actually still currently use. And then giving students access to the standards. Other aspects that were new to me, or other skills that were new to me, were setting up blogs. I'd never set up a blog before, and this was one of the first blogs I set up for EdTech 501. And notice that it's a very plain looking blog. The thought of having my information out there for the world to see was overwhelming. This was my first attempt at embedding something. And, did I embed it? Yes. Is it the best embedding that you've ever seen? Absolutely not. But let's go ahead and compare that to something that I did a little bit later in my EdTech career. And this was one of the last classes I took. And just notice the difference in presentation. Initial screen. None of my weekly lessons or blogs were separated. And then I found this, and each one of these represents their own blog. And the presentation of it is just so much more engaging and so much more inviting than when I initially started the blog. I learned so much as far as just how to attract attention and present information in a way that was inviting. And then we come here. This was one of my classes that I really started to think about what I want to have happen. And it's after I had been at a school that I'm currently at for 2 years. And one of my favorite lessons that I did was this strategic change. And it was to create a flow chart for something that we want to change. And my goal was a classroom set of Google Chromebooks for every math teacher in the school. And I kind of chuckled to myself because it was a lofty goal that that kind of got hit upon in the when this product was graded, and it's still something I'm pushing for, but it's actually gaining traction in my school. And I'm actually using the flow chart of what's here on this flow chart. I'm using it currently to get what I want done. And I do believe by the end of next year that I am going to have a set of Google Chromebooks for every math teacher in my school. But notice again, the blog presentation has grown quite a bit since my original blog. Here was for my 511 where we had to create some interactive products. You can click there. Here's another assignment from the same one that just shows how I can manipulate an image. Show a student how a triangle can be translated, reflected, and then dilated. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to designing many websites using the skills that I did here, or lessons I should say. And then here, students they see an image, and then they get to test their knowledge, and if they're incorrect, it sort of reiterates what it is they're supposed to learn. So where does this take me now? Well, this is where I'm at. And this is my website for my school. Things that I've done as a result of what I've learned is, I using my tweets from the school. I have the school's Twitter link right here, so anything that the school puts up, the students have access to it right away. I have my online learning tools, my tutorial programs that I use, notes that I present in class. I actually have online so my students can see. That's something that was never done before. If you scroll down here, I have a NFL project-based learning type activity. It's over 17 weeks. Um, and if you look here, something else that I've learned in this class is just how to, make videos of online tutorials. And if you click on this, it takes kids to how to set up spreadsheets. And so my kids now know how to set up Google Docs spreadsheets. They know how to work with Google Sites, and it's been quite the experience. My students and my coworkers benefit as a result. This was one of the first project-based learnings that I did actually for a class that I took. And if you just notice the similarities and differences, the presentation, I feel as though it has come a long way from where I started. If you just compare where we're at and what I'm able to do, it's been quite the experience, and I've benefited from this process of attaining my master's quite a bit. And not only have I benefited, but the people I work with have benefited directly from what I'm able to help them set up on their websites, or suggestions that I'm able to make, and the conversations I'm able to have. The passion that I have now for technology in the classroom is tenfold from what it was 3 years ago. And I look forward to continuing the push to have technology in the classroom, because I've seen what it can do for my students, and I look forward to always growing as a professional. Thank you for viewing this video, and thank you for going through the last 2.5 years with me.